Our next tutorial covers a variable that I made up called LastRow, and it uses a built-in function that VBA includes called ActiveSheet.useRange.rows.count, which counts how many rows are used in a particular worksheet, whichever worksheet is active. So let's do an example here. I'm going to copy the data from video 7 from cells A1 through B4, just the player number and player name. So I'm going to start a new worksheet, name video 8, last row, and I'll come up to A1 and paste. And I'll double click to resize, bold. Let me zoom in. So player number and player name. So let me start a new program. Name video 8. And I'm going to go over to Canvas. One of the things about VBA is there's a lot of code on the internet. So if you Google a certain command in that you're looking for in VBA, there's a lot of tutorials out there that can show it to you. We also have our textbook that's online, linked from the syllabus, and there's code in there that you could copy and paste as well. So it's very common. You see I've been copying and pasting between subs in my module. Incidentally, just a reminder to always put your code in module 1, or if you've already recorded video in module 2. But I'm going to go out to Canvas, so I'm going to pull up the browser here, and I'm going to select the last row equation. So I'm going to select it, right-click and copy, and then I'll come over to VBA, and I'm going to paste it. So last row is a variable, so I'm going to define it. Dim last row is long. I'm picking long as the type. Because it's a row number, so it's a whole number. So let's just let's include a message box that just shows what the last row is. So I'm going to insert a button to run it. Video 8. And I'll call it last row. And when I run it, it should show a 4. Whoops. I had a bug. I put message instead of message box. So I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to hit the reset button because I see up here that I'm in break mode. So I'm going to stop and go into break mode. Incidentally, it's very important. Sometimes you'll have multiple files open. So if you're working on assignment 1 or skills test for VBA, you might open a file. It's important that you close the file so you don't accidentally add to a module in the wrong file, because over here you have the name of the workbook. So I've got week 4 tutorials open, and this is my module 1, and this is the code that goes along with that file. So I don't want you to lose your work by typing or saving your code or copying and pasting into the wrong file. But anyway, I was in break mode before. I had to hit the reset button, so I'm going to go back to my code and try again, and it shows a 4. Let me add a different one. I'm trying to think of somebody. 55 is JP Makura. Not that he's a fine player, but doesn't deserve to be in the same list here, but I couldn't think of another number. And now it changes to 5. So I'm going to add an apostrophe here to comment out this last row. And instead, I'm going to set the cells equal to some values. So remember in last video, we learned the cells in the row, comma, column. So let's imagine that we want the user to enter a new value. We don't know how many rows there are in the code, so we can't count on there being 5 or 4. We don't know when it's being executed, but we can compute the last row, and then we can add 1 to it to put an entry in the next empty row. So I'm going to have cells last row plus 1, and in the first column we have the player's name. So I'm going to have an input box, and I'm going to tell them to enter the player's name. And then I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. But this time, instead of column 1, I'm going to insert it in column 2, and instead of name, I'm going to enter number. So let's go ahead and run that, and initially it should pull up 5 as the last row, and because it pulls up 5 as the last, computes 5 as the last row plus 1 is 6, so it's going to put the first entry. I've got those mixed up. The player number is in column 1 and the player name is in column 2. So I'm just going to switch those, 2 and 1. And when I run it, I'm going to say enter the player's name. Trayvon Blewett. Not sure if that's how you spell his name. And I believe he was number 5. And because I ran it from here, it minimized. And it didn't center it because I didn't have the entire column formatted. That doesn't have anything to do with VBA. It was just the format on the worksheet. So let me try again. Enter the player's name. Xavier grad David West, and he currently wears number 3. He was 30 when he was at Xavier. Okay, so you get the idea. Maybe we'll make one last modification here. So within the input box, I'm going to put enter the number of, and then I'm going to concatenate the entry above, which is cells last row plus 1, comma 2. So what this is going to do is it's going to have an input box with a prompt that has the entry from the name that they just entered. So let me make sure that works. So enter the player's name. Stephen Curry. Enter the number of Stephen Curry, and he is number 30. He's a teammate of David West, which explains why David West was not allowed to wear 30. Okay, so I think you get the idea of what the purpose of the last row is. Computes how many rows are used in a worksheet, either for data entry or displaying the data. And it can be used in conjunction with the cells function.